Nigeria's economy to grow by 2.7% in 2022, says International Monetary Fund, IMF. 98% of 1.1 million conditional cash transfer beneficiaries are women, says federal government. Oil prices drop as Brent on track for first weekly dip in 7 weeks. Plus, Asia stocks mix as shares jump following reports it will pay interest due on bond. This is Business Express on the network service of the NTA. We are reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Musa Abubakar. Now let's begin with global focus. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has predicted Nigeria's economy to grow by 2.6% this year and 2.7% growth in 2022. This is according to the October Regional Economic Outlook for Sub-Saharan Africa. This was made available at the recent annual meetings of the IMF and World Bank in Washington, D.C. It stated that the growth will be driven by a recovery in non-oil sectors and higher oil prices. The IMF Outlook also estimated that Sub-Saharan Africa's economic growth will be 3.7% in 2021 and 3.8% in 2022. Now, meanwhile, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, says forex policy and the coronavirus pandemic slowed Nigeria's foreign remittance in 2020. In its Sub-Saharan Africa Economic Outlook release, the IMF said Nigeria's foreign remittance dropped by 28% despite an increase of 1.6% in remittances amongst other countries in the region last year. The remittance flow, which declined by 13.4%, was driven by a dramatic fall of 28% in Nigeria, but expected to grow by 2.6% in 2021. The outlook, which is titled One Planet, Two Worlds, Three Stories, noted that the positive outlook comes on top of a better than expected outcome in 2020. The Fiscal Responsibility Commission is set to embark on advocacy for reforms and push for adoption of best practices in public finance management across the country. Chairman of the Commission, Victor Morocco, disclosed that under its Transparency, Accountability and Prudence project, the Commission is embarking on zonal sensitization of Northwest and Southwest states of the country, aim at enshrining prudence in government, business, and advancing macroeconomic stability and sustainability of the country.
Trying to get citizens to get it right. In very not too distant time, we'll also be embarking on the capital project verification of federal government projects. We have been making efforts equally on our debt monitoring exercises, notwithstanding the constitutional provisions of fiscal federalism.
The Commission also signed a memorandum of understanding with the Nigerian Institute of Surveyors to strengthen its project monitoring mandate. Vice President Emir Shibajo says the various intervention programs of the Buhari administration since 2015 to date are designed and implemented to improve the health, education and socio-economic conditions of the Nigerian people, especially women, children and youths. The Vice President said this in Abuja at an event to mark 6 years of the Future Assured program, an initiative of the Aisha Buhari Foundation.
As it should be, the very future of Nigeria and the very future of our communities depends on how well we address the many concerns of women and children in our communities, especially the three focal areas that Future Assured has identified: health, education, and empowerment, and economic empowerment. And we agree with Future Assured's belief that all social indices can be influenced if the health, education, and economic status of the population are improved upon.
The Central Bank of Nigeria says Nigeria's external reserve gained $3.98 billion in 3 weeks, rising above the $40 billion mark. The CBN data shows that the reserve rose to $40.76 billion on October 20th from $36.78 billion as of the end of September. The reserves, which had maintained a growth trajectory in recent weeks, rose by $2.76 billion in September from $34.02 billion at the end of August. Now, 10 Nigerian startups are participating in one of the globe's most influential tech shows, Gulf Information Technology Exhibition GTEX, holding in Dubai World Trade Center. This year's theme, Creating a Bolder Digital Future Together, is in sync with Nigeria's digital quest.
Good. Our startups have arrived and they have started networking. We have seen some investors visiting their stands, and also they are networking with other global ecosystems. And tomorrow is enough for them to network.
The federal government has pledged full support for the innovative strengthening of smallholder farmers and the intervention program of the African Union Development Agency amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development Mohammed Mahmoud Abubakar represented President Muhammadu Buhari at the unveiling ceremony in Abuja.
So that it's very heartwarming that Nigeria was chosen from the ECOWAS sub-region as a pilot state for this laudable initiative. Given the commitment of government to make life better for the citizens of Nigeria, I want to assure you that the innovative strengthening of smallholder farmers' capabilities towards productive land restoration will enjoy the total support of government at the national and subnational levels.
Now, the federal government says it is reviewing its national automotive industry development plan in a bid to boost Nigeria's rubber industry and diversify the economy. Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment Adeniyi Richard Adebayo stated this at the 2021 National Rubber Conference organized by the National Rubber Producers, Processors and Marketers Association of Nigeria in collaboration with the Trade and Agriculture Ministries. The minister, who was represented by Deputy Director Industrial Development Mohammed Bala, added that the federal government's diversification agenda is also focused on agriculture, solid minerals and manufacturing. The theme of the conference is industrialization of the rubber subsector in Nigeria. Now, to further shed more light on what it means to boost Nigeria's rubber industry and diversify the economy is the National President, National Rubber Producers, Processors and Marketers Association of Nigeria, Egbinosun Peter. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
I had a little difficulty trying to get your name, but you're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you so much. Egbinosun Peter is my name.
Egbinosun Peter. Thank you very much
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, the rubber industry, take us through the value chain. Take us through the value chain.
Well, the rubber industry has over 50 byproducts used in over 400,000 applications. It starts from the plantation, which is at the nursery stage. From the nursery, you go to the planting in the field, and from the planting in the field, you go to harvesting. From harvesting, you go to what you have harvested is called the primary products, primary raw materials. And after that, you go to process the primary product to the secondary raw material that will eventually be used by the byproduct manufacturing sector.
I hear it has more than 50 byproducts.
Yes, it has more than 50 byproducts, and in every sector of the economy, rubber is very relevant.
Okay, what are we looking at, the byproducts?
Well, first, people know rubber for tires and tubes. They know rubber for balloons and football. They know rubber for shoe soles, rubber band, condoms, pacifiers. Okay. We have other products like the medical and surgical hand gloves, okay. The car mats, the what do you call it, the seats and the foams.
How much of this are we taking advantage of?
Today in Nigeria, we have very, very few companies that are producing just shoe soles and car mats and door mats. The rest we are importing into the country.
But really, rubber used to be one of those products that we actually rely on in the past. Yes. What happened along the way?
Well, it was a misplaced priority, not just for rubber, for agriculture generally. In the past, before the 70s, before we saw crude oil, agriculture was the mainstay of the economy. Then the cash crop that drove the economy of this country was cocoa, rubber, granules, and some other crops, But when we saw crude oil, everything about agriculture went down the drain. There was a shift, and this shift was not good for us because before now, agriculture was providing more than 70% employment for the country. Agriculture was, the GDP agriculture was contributing to the Nigeria economy was more than 70%. But suddenly we saw oil and we said goodbye to agriculture, and rubber suffered the most. If we set our priorities right, let me even tell you, in the 60s, rubber was the second tier of in Benin. Then they call it the Benin. I can't remember what they used to call it now. Rubber was actually Nigeria's second tier of foreign exchange because we were producing rubber, we were processing rubber, and we were exporting rubber. Nigeria was the highest producer of rubber in Africa and 5th in the world.
So now, can you paint a picture for us now, what it looks like, the amount of production and the gap?
Yes. Today, Nigeria is the third ranked producer in Africa, producing only 6% of African total production, as compared to Cote d'Ivoire, who is producing 76% of the total African production.
But what was it like before?
Before now, yes. Nigeria was producing at about 79% of African total production. Wow. Because we started rubber in Africa and others started planting rubber after Nigeria has started. Rubber came into Nigeria in 1895, and the first estate was planted in 1903. Other countries then were not there, So rubber was actually massively entered into, and we had a lot of plantations. Then we even had companies that were using the products here in Nigeria, like Dunlop, like Michelin, like Bridgestone. They were here. We had a lot of factories in the southwest, and then of course we had a lot in the south-south. Those are the rubber beds in Nigeria.
So what do we need to do to maximize the potentials in the sector?
The truth of the matter is, for a reasonable government, they should know now that a lot of factors are acting against the crude oil. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons that the federal government have started thinking about developing the non-oil sector. Yeah. Now, if we had to do that, it means that we have to reappraise the situation and then have a blueprint or a roadmap to developing our agriculture one more time. And for rubber, for instance, what we need to do is to have the national rubber policy. When we have the national rubber policy, maybe a policy for 10 years, and we can say, okay, we are going to develop rubber sector for the next 10 years, and we are going to go as much as another 500,000 hectares of rubber. Because today, we have 18 million hectares of land suitable for planting rubber in Nigeria. But we have only planted 200,000 hectares. Cote d'Ivoire has planted close to 1 million hectares. Wow. Can I tell you this? Cote d'Ivoire today is making $1.3 billion in 2020 from export of rubber. Nigeria made $20.9 million. We have shifted our position. In 2 years ago, we had 19th in the world, but today we are 23rd in terms of export. So what we need to do is, one, encourage the players in the industry. By first and foremost, let's have a policy that thinks about developing the rubber sector or subsector in the country. Number two thing is for government to find a way to fund the sector. You know, one of the disincentives that rubber has for investors is that it has a 7 years gestation period. And most people think that, okay, if I put my money into rubber production, I will have to wait for 7 years before I start reaping or start getting returns on my investment. But they forget to know that once you start production in rubber, for the next 37 years, rubber give you money on daily basis.
Okay, would the focus be on just producing rubber as a raw material, or will it involve other finish, or value chain?
What we are having today is this. We have about 54 factories in Nigeria. Out of these 54, only 11 is producing. The rest have gone either moribund or they have shut down. And the reason is because of paucity of raw materials. Okay, so our thinking as an association is, let us boost our raw material base, and by planting and replanting most of our plantations, after which we can now drive industrialization. If any investor is coming into the economic space to think about investing in this industry, the first thing he thinks about is the raw materials. So if we don't have enough raw materials, it means that this guy is coming to waste his investment. So we are now thinking as an association that in the next 10 years, we have developed a blueprint that for the next 10 years, we want to plant and replant 160,000 hectares of rubber plantation, and that will give us enough raw materials to drive industrialization. Look, I'll tell you sincerely that if we achieve this purpose, it will, number one, we will employ 640,000 people directly, and we will employ 250,000 people indirectly. And at the end of this project, we will make 2.6 trillion naira. Wow. Now, if all the state government can say that, okay, we plant 160,000 hectares of rubber plantation in all over the areas where we can develop rubber in the country, I tell you sincerely that the money they are coming to the federal government to collect, what they call their yearly, monthly allocation, rubber alone can give it to them.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
We know soon, Idowu Peter.
Thank you so much.
I hope I got it right.
Yes, you did. You did.
Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
Now moving on, gold inched higher and was poised for a second weekly gain on Friday as a softer dollar provided some respite against higher U.S. bond yields and rising expectations that central banks could begin easing economic support. Oil prices fell on Friday with Brent poised for its first weekly dip in 7 weeks as demand for oil products in power generation cool off amid easing coal and gas prices, while a focus for a mild U.S. winter also weigh on the market. Brent crude futures dropped 50 cents to $84.11 a barrel, extending a $1.21 slump in the previous session. Brent touched a 3-year high of $86.10 on Thursday, but was on track to slip 0.9% in the week, the first weekly dip since September. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures fell 49 cents to $82.01 a barrel, following a 92-cent loss on Thursday. Now, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, says it spent 1.165 trillion naira to subsidize petrol for oil exploration and remittance to the Federation Account Allocation Committee in 7 months of this year. According to NNPC monthly FAC report for September, the 3 expenditure items gov 57% of the total revenue distribution of 2.043 trillion naira done by the National Oil Company in the first 8 months of 2021. The balance of 878 billion naira was distributed for other expenditures, including crude oil lifting inspection expenses, subsidy which NNPC described as under recovery of premium motor spirit value shortfall. The corporation said it spent 714.7 billion naira within 7 months from February to August. A global market review with Boside Abel.
Hello and welcome to the Global Market Review. Now, other factors and positive twists by Chinese Evergrande Group overnight in Hong Kong set the tone of most global stocks on the last trading day of the week, following media reports that the embattled developer is set to pay off a coupon payment on dollar-denominated bond. Now, Asia-Pacific markets were mixed on Friday as shares of Chinese Evergrande Group surged in Hong Kong. Hang Seng Index was 0.42% high at 26,126.93, while mainland Chinese stocks were mixed, with the Shanghai Composite dropping 0.34% at 3,582.6, while Nikkei topped 0.34% to close 28,804.85. European stocks advanced on Friday as fears over the Chinese property market cooled, while investors monitored corporate earnings and key economic data. DAX was 0.63% high, CAC 40 was 0.97% high, and FTSE 100 also topped 0.35%. U.S. stock futures were muted in early morning trading Friday after disappointing earnings reports from technology companies. Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 0.03%, while S&P 500 and Nasdaq Composites were on the low. Now, this trend also affected African markets, with most stocks like South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40 and Namibia's overall index recovering from days of being muted. Tunisia's Tunidex was negative, while Nairobi's All-Share and Ghana's GSE Composite still maintaining Thursday's figures. That's the Global Market Review segment. I am Boside Abel. Please stay for the concluding part of the program.
This is where we end this episode of the program. Don't forget, you can access all previous episodes on YouTube. We value your feedback. Do join us again for another package. I am Musa Abubakar saying, have a pleasant weekend.